narrator of Mama's Boy is a pretty despicable character, but he does have his reasons for that. His perspective on reality is really not the same perspective that the reader gets from the first-person narration. So the disconnect between these two things is what makes a lot of the humor in the book, but also a lot of the heartbreaking moments when he actually says something that you realize is true and very poignant. So I'm just going to read a little bit from the beginning of the book, just to give you an idea of the beginning of his life. This is chapter 1, Resilience. My mother was always committing suicide. She started out young in a purely amateur capacity, but it wasn't long before Mama figured out how to make the psychiatrists take notice and to get the respect only the most serious cases warranted. Electroshocks, massive doses of antidepressants, antipsychotics, anxiolytics, and other mood stabilizers marked the seasons as she struggled through them. While I collected hockey cards, she collected diagnoses. Thanks to the huge effort she put into her crises, my mother contributed greatly to the advancement of psychiatry. If it weren't for the little matter of patient confidentiality, I'm sure several hospitals would be named after her. My mother was discreet and usually tried to kill herself in secret. Contrary to what the official reports claimed, I wasn't all that bothered by her habit. Whenever Mama could drag herself out of her private hell and get back on her feet, she was a wonderful woman. And those experts can go hang themselves too, with their pseudo-analyses of our attachment issues. The first time I found her, she was naked and moaning on the bathroom floor. I was 4 years old. Mama had hauled herself out of the bathtub, which was full of a reddish soup that made it look as though she'd been butchered, her wrists in particular. It was her sharp little cries mixed with sobs that woke me up. As soon as I dared poke my head round the door, she ordered me to go and get Denise. I froze. I'm pretty sure that's normal. My mother's nakedness, the steak knife, the bloody bath, it was quite the scene. But not really a satisfactory family situation, as people pointed out to me later. It was messy. I wanted to at least pick up the knife and put it away. My mother was awkwardly trying to cover her genitals and yelling ever more loudly, "Go tell Denise to call an ambulance, you goddamn imbecile." Whenever the name-calling started, the slap was never far behind. "Go on, do it!" Denise lived on the floor below us. The triplex was poorly soundproofed. I always knew when she was up. She was deaf and watched television with the sound at maximum volume. I often ate with her. She kept a box of Cap'n Crunch specially for me in one of her kitchen cupboards. I used to snuggle up with Denise on her big brown leatherette couch. I'd try and follow as she compulsively changed the channel. When she hit the weather channel, she'd pause for a few seconds longer than normal. I found that fascinating because she never went out. She even had her groceries delivered, including my precious cereal. But she still always knew what the weather was doing. You never know, kiddo. You never know. Denise was a wise woman. "What are you waiting for? You think I can go myself? Wake up!" Mama had managed to get up and was hiding her bottom half by curling up between the bath and the toilet. I remember thinking she was going to a lot of trouble to hide a bit of hair. I hadn't really wrapped my head around the situation at that point. I was torn between throwing myself into my mother's arms, helping her clean up the mess, and doing what she asked by going to get Denise to help. "Go on, you fucker!" I ran to the neighbors. Every time I went over to her place, Denise would ask me to massage her feet. They were all dry with white bumps and scars, but I indulged her. It was the sacrifice I made in our symbiotic relationship. Sometimes I tickled her and we both laughed. Despite the 54-year age gap, I'd never had a better friend. She's the only woman who's ever told me I'm good-looking. I am good-looking, I know I am, but women hardly ever say it because I intimidate them. Denise knew how to win me over. She loved me, but there weren't many like her. I hadn't put my boots on in the rush, and the iron stairs hurt my feet. It was a really cold November. Denise's door was never locked. I didn't even think about knocking as I burst into the house, calling her name. Getting no response, I raced straight to her bedroom and pushed at the half-open door. And then I was paralyzed with horror. The traumas were piling up. Sitting on the corner of the bed, in the moonlight filtering through the blinds, her stupefied gaze meeting my own, Denise was holding her hair in her hands, some distance away from her head. All that remained were a few tufts of sparse hairs, Her whole mane had come off. Gripping her scalp with her fingers, she stared at me, mumbling, "My hair." She wanted to put it back on her head, but it was already too late. The image had burnt itself into my brain, even more than the image of my mother's body on the bathroom floor. Denise called the emergency services. I didn't dare look at her again. I stuffed my face with Cap'n Crunch until I felt like throwing up, waiting for my mother to go off in the ambulance and for someone to take me to a shelter for the night. I was grateful for that, terrified by the thought of staying the night at Denise's. If this bold woman really was Denise, I couldn't be sure of anything anymore. After that, I often saw my mother try to kill herself, usually coinciding with changes in medication or partner, but I never saw Denise again. I have good memories of her, a feeling of safety mixed with fear. Ever since then, Cap'n Crunch has tasted of nostalgia, and I've had a phobia of wigs. Thank you.